Everybody, I have the 1965 Gibson reverse, our Firebird non-reverse headstock that's in here for a paint strip and refinish. And notice that the frets on this are very worn, most likely the original. They're quite flat top and have some divots. The owner said it was playing good when he sold, or when he sent it here, but the best time to replace frets are when you're doing a refinish if they need it, and these definitely need it. It reduces the chance of chipping the finish otherwise. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do a couple of fret removals, and I'm using an old soldering iron instead of my best soldering iron. But you heat the frets first so that you're basically, any glue that somebody might have used to put them in is being softened, and as it transmits the heat down through the fret. And this is a rosewood fretboard, and I'm using a little bit of a chisel tip. My widest chisel tip is in another soldering iron, so I'm not using it, but it's just laying it on there for a little bit and getting it nice and hot. It's turned up to the highest setting, so 800 and some odd degrees. Just get it a little bit warm. And I've already pulled one of these to see how it goes, and it was chip free. But these are chip removal, or these are fret removal pliers. They're just flat on the face, made specifically for this. But I'm just gonna get down to the very base of that and just wiggle a little bit, and it will begin to slide those jaws underneath of it, and just barely go a little at a time. And out comes a fret that's been in there since 1965, and you can see there's a little microchips, but that's not an issue at all. That'll be covered up by the next fret, as well as filled in with CA glue in the process. Another way that I've done this before is an actual clothes iron, and just set the iron across multiples at the same time, which actually works quite well. But for some reason your wife gets mad when you use the clothes iron on guitars. I don't know what that's about, but it does happen that way, so you know you have to give it back when that happens. I would say it's different order.
If this was a maple fretboard, you would have to score the edges of all the frets and all the way around, or else it would tear up the finish as you were going. So you score the edges of all the frets and have to pull them out. And maple fretboards cost a lot more to refinish for that reason, because they are a pain, because you're always going to have to do touch up on them, because something's going to chip. And you would tape off in between the frets or use something of that nature to avoid any kind of touch with the soldering iron, which I don't have to worry about with rosewood. I wouldn't leave a soldering iron for very long, but if it touches for a split second, it's not going to hurt anything. On rosewood, there's no finish on it. And surprisingly, after 60 years, this rosewood finish, if you wipe it, the rose color will still come out of that wood if you wipe it with a solvent. It's just part of the wood, is that pinkish tint within the grain. It stays there forever. You notice I don't pull them out fast. I just kind of try to go slow, a little at a time, to avoid any more chip out than needed. One to go. Have it. It's not necessarily easy to see everything, but there's some chips that come up with it and just dirt that's under them. But that is removing all the frets from a 60-year-old fretboard. Next is putting them all back together again. Just using some 400 grit paper here, just to sand any of those high edges off of those frets. Not enough to change the profile on the board at all. This board's got some wear in between the frets, so this also will help to level a little bit. Now I'm adding some CA glue. This is just a medium. You can use thin, but it tends to run out more and be more of a challenge to deal with. This is just now going to soak into any of that dust that was there that I just created to fill in any of those chips so they're not visible again. Which chips are inevitable at some level. It's impossible to get away from them. And then this will be sanded flat, and then I'll reslot this with a slotting saw.
Gonna now sand with some 120 grit just to knock all of the high super glue down. And then once that is done to where it's fairly smooth, I want to make sure the fretboard is level. And so I'm going to use something that I've used for years. This is literally just an old Stanley level that had machined edges on it, so that it has sandpaper attached to it that is 120 grit on one side and 320 grit on the other. But you just use it in a rocking motion, so if you're following the fretboard, and it allows that fretboard then to stay in radius, because you're just following the radius and you're not going back and forth and digging into one specific spot. So this makes sure the fretboard is flat across the length. I need to probably change out my paper. It's been on there for quite a while. And the fretboard is full. All the tension is released, so it should be flat anyway. Little area here.